In a world where our tools can literally think for us, the big question becomes, how do we think better? That's exactly what we're going to get into today as we explore what critical thinking looks like in the age of AI. All right, let's frame this whole thing with a really simple metaphor. Think of AI as this incredibly powerful engine. I mean, it gives us immense speed and horsepower. But an engine without a driver? Well, that's just a runaway machine, right? Critical thinking, that's the driver. It's what provides the direction, the judgment, and ultimately, the control. So, what happens when we let that engine just run wild without a driver? We hit our first big problem, the passenger problem. It's this risk of just becoming a passive rider, completely losing control on this new information superhighway.
Look, AI promises us speed and efficiency. It's designed to be totally frictionless. But in that rush, in our hurry to grab these amazing new tools, it's so easy to forget who's actually supposed to be in the driver's seat. We start outsourcing not just our tasks, but our thinking.
And this really gets to the heart of it. We all have a choice to make. We can either be the passenger, just passively consuming whatever the machine spits out, basically just a flight path checker, rubber stamping the output, or we can be the pilot, the idea architect who's actively in command, steering the entire reasoning process. The goal here is to be the pilot, not the passenger. And here's why that choice matters so much. This quote, it puts it so bluntly. If your main value is just signing off on a robot's opinions, well, you're not just failing to future-proof your career, you are quite literally documenting your own obsolescence. It's a pretty stark warning against getting too passive. Okay, so what actually happens when we offload too much of our thinking? We run into a really tangible danger. Our own logic just starts to collapse. We end up exceeding a critical limit.
This limit is called the cognitive cargo limit. A great way to think about it is like your mind's maximum payload. It's that precise point where a problem's complexity just completely overwhelms your ability to think it through critically. And when you hit that limit, your reasoning just fails.
And this image just illustrates the idea perfectly, doesn't it? Just like this massively overloaded truck, when we try to carry too much cognitive weight without having the right mental support structures, or even worse, we let someone else load it up without us even checking, the whole system just breaks down. We completely lose control. So when our logic breaks down, what happens? We don't just, stop thinking. Nope. Instead, we fall back on these old mental shortcuts. We fall right into some very common cognitive traps. I'm sure these sound familiar. There's confirmation bias, where we only look for information that we already agree with. Information shortcuts, where that first idea we have becomes the only idea. Oversimplification, where we kind of sacrifice reality for an easy answer. And of course, social traps, like groupthink, where nobody dares to challenge a bad idea because everyone just wants to get along. Hitting our cognitive limit basically makes these our default settings. So how do we avoid all this? How do we take back the wheel? Well, the solution is to have a system, like a mental checklist you run before you even start the engine. Let's call it the pre-trip inspection. The logic here is so simple. To be a good driver, you don't just slam your foot on the gas. You need a system for how you're going to navigate. After all, speed is absolutely useless without steering. And here is that system. It's a clear four-stage framework. First, you inquire. What's the actual problem we're trying to solve here? Second, you explore. What are all the different ways we could possibly think about this? Third, you solve. This is where you analyze all those options, really rigorously. And finally, you apply. You propose the best solution and then plan out how you're going to get there. This is how you stay in control. So let's bring this all together now. It's time to talk about the practical shift, about actually going from being a passenger to becoming the pilot and truly reclaiming your role in the process. So how do we do it? We can use something called the participation paradox protocol. It sounds really complex, but it's just a mental audit. The whole point is to intentionally add some healthy friction back into your process. It slows you down just enough to make sure that you, the human, stay as the idea architect. So how do real pilots stay in command? By taking these very concrete actions. First, they establish their intent. They ask the hard questions before the engine is even on. They challenge assumptions. They question the data. They question their own trust in the tools. They define the deliverable with absolute precision, no vague tasks. And maybe most importantly, they mandate a human in the loop, making sure an expert always signs off on the final logic. So here's the crucial takeaway. The goal is not to avoid AI, not at all. It's to change your relationship with it. You want to use it like a sparring partner, something to sharpen your own thinking. It's a tool to enhance your judgment, never,
ever to replace it.
This technology gives us speed and power like we've never seen before. There's just no doubt about that. But it leaves us with the single most important question, and it's one only you can answer for yourself. Who is steering?